Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today. As usual, don't forget, you can always give us a call at 281-823-7747. Again, that number is 281-823-7747. I hope everybody is ready for what is it again? The Weekend Baby. It's the Weekend Baby coming up. And you know what? I got so much work to do this weekend because I'm going to try to get a whole bunch of that video or that audio done for the book if I can. So you know how that goes, folks. We're going to have a great show for you. Welcome aboard, Eric Hayes. Good Friday and happy Easter. Thank you, Eric. We also have Lee Grant say, hey, y'all, wishing you meaningful and reflective Good Friday. We have Nathaniel N. Compia Jr. Good evening, folks. Nathaniel says, Melanie Keelan from Barcelona, Spain says, happy Good Friday, everybody. And we have, of course, from Atlanta, Georgia, Yvette Avery Herod, La Preciosa, La Hermosa, beautiful lady from Atlanta, Georgia. And there is Michael Rudnin from Brooklyn, New York. And we have some more New Yorkers in the house because guess who else is here? Bridge MCP from Binghamton, New York. And we have El Señor J. Ray said, Good Friday, Egberto. And J. Ray is in from where again? From Third Ward, Houston, Texas. Anyway, folks, we're going to have a great show for you today. Bree says, Hola peeps. Hola peeps is the word. Yep, folks, how are you doing today? We're going to have a great show. Anyhow. Today, oops, I don't have the programs that I want to do. Oh, Yvette Avery says, I will be in Brooklyn next week for a funeral. Not the best reason to go to New York, but my condolences for whomever it is, whichever loved one of you that went on to the new realm. My most sincere condolences, my sis. Anyhow, folks, you're kind of getting up. Well, I guess that doesn't even mean getting up in age because young people are falling left and right as well, But I've lost a lot of folks that I know over the last few, and it's not nothing good about it, nothing good about it. But anyhow, you know how that goes. Life is for the living, and we're going to keep on going. But Yvette, I wish you all the best, sis, when you get up there to New York, and maybe who knows if you can get a cup of coffee if you're in the vicinity of Brother Rudnin. That would be a good thing, a good thing. Anyhow, folks, we're going to have a good show. Like I said, I'm just waiting for more people to check in. I'm looking to see if our email went out to make sure that other folks are, in fact, on the way here. Para ver. The email hasn't gone out yet, so we'll see what goes on in the short term. All right, let me see what else we've got here before we get started. I had an interesting show at KPFT this morning, but unfortunately, since we had a bad start, I had to rejiggle everything. And in the process of rejiggling everything, you know what this crazy guy did? I forgot to push the internet button. So while the show was live on air, it was not on the internet, but I did go ahead and get the stream from our remote server and I created the video for it to make sure that it got there. So, what can I say? We try our best to get everything that needs to get done done, to make sure everything that needs to get done, done. I tell you something that is upsetting to me before I get into the program. There used to be a time that first class mail would get to you in a day, and same with the, regular standard mail would get to you in a day or two. Not anymore. It takes a lot of times forever to get a product shipped, or rather to get a product received. And I honestly don't understand why. I sent one of my books to somebody in Cyprus. By the way, it's on the same latitude with Kingwood. And you know what? They have yet to receive the book. The problem is not the USPS. The problem is the new conservative that is running the USPS, trying to cut corners and hurting people. That's where the problem lies. That is where the problem lies. And, we need to do something about it. Anyhow, folks, we're going to get started now here. One of the first items that I really wanted to talk about, and I'm trying to find it as we speak, it's the topic I covered on KPFT this morning, and I need to find it. And as we speak, I'm trying to go to my Substack, the newsletter, to pick it up because for some reason, Common Dreams have so many stories today that it seemed to have skated off the system. But in the magic of Substack, and if you take a look at my newsletter here at Substack, let me go ahead and push this baby. That's my letter here at Substack. I am going to find that article. All right, I want to start with that article. And let me tell you why I want to start with that article. I'll tell you why. The title is "The Media Industry's Financial Problems Are Bad News for Democracy." And what's starting to happen is, if you notice, if you go to the New York Times, if you go to the New York Post, if you go to most newspapers today, you got enticed. You click a button and you can read the newspaper for an article or two, and then after that, you have to pay. And it's a problem because, well, I tell you what, let me read the beginning of this article, and I want you to be with me here. I need you to listen to this in detail. This is a problem that we must ultimately mitigate. I want you to so hear me out. Listen to what we're talking about here. This is how it goes. All right, good. The letters went out. The media industry's financial problems are bad news for democracy. The Miami Herald is one of America's top newspapers, winner of a whopping 24 Pulitzer Prizes, renowned in its heyday for its extensive coverage of Latin America, and publisher of the epic investigative reporting that took down the financier uh, Jeffrey Epstein. Checking it out Monday, I read the latest on the raids on hip hop star Diddy's Miami Beach mansions, a report from Haiti by its longtime award winning correspondent. And then on the fourth click, I hit the paywall. A subscription would be 99 cents for the first month, then $15.99 for this out of towner to be able to read the South Florida's best journalism. And the paper is really good. But you can still read the Miami Chronicle for free. So there is the Miami Herald, which is a solid paper. And then there's a newspaper sounding name called the Miami Chronicle. The Miami Chronicle is free because it's subsidized. Check this out. The Chronicle's website is topped by a Gothic style header that looks borrowed from the Herald's fonts, the Miami Herald's fonts. A tagline read, "The Florida news since 1937 seems to have vanished since the New York Times reported the site actually didn't exist before late this February." So that site once lied and told people that it wasn't established since 1937. It just came into existence in February. I wonder why. I wonder why. The Chronicle's headline linked to stories from the BBC and other sources. In other words, they don't produce a damn thing. They don't really have reporters to speak of. So They simply carry stories from the BBC and other sources. Who knows? Maybe we are on there as well. There is no about page that tells you what the paper is about, who funds it, or anything. You have to read the also paywall New York Times to know that according to researchers and government officials, the Chronicle and at least four sister sites like the New York News Daily, as opposed to the Daily News or DC Weekly, are part of a Russia-backed disinformation network. So these purported newspapers, these things that look like online newspapers, are really nothing more than sites that are paid for by Vladimir Putin. The paper called the news sites a technological leap forward in the Vladimir Putin's regime's goal of fooling US voters with fears that more deceptive fake news will appear on these pages as the November election gets closer. In 1984, Whole Earth catalog hippie guru Stuart Brand said famously, information wants to be free. The reality is, 40 years later, is that for millions of internet readers, it's disinformation, articles that twist facts, offer toxic opinions, and increasingly include AI generated deepfake videos, pictures, and audio that wants to be free. The truth? That's probably going to cost you. You probably heard that 2024 has been an annus horribilis of the American media, even though we are only 12 weeks into the year. Hard-working journalists, many of them young and disproportionately people of color, have been laid off or taken buyouts at news organizations such as the Los Angeles Times, Vice Media, Sports Illustrated, and The Messenger, which closed after just a year. And we pointed out many of that earlier in the year, where all these people were being laid off because management was getting big bucks as they didn't get the job done. This happened as smaller local newspapers are shutting down at a rate of 2 a week, leaving as many as 200 news deserts, mostly rural counties with no working journalists across America. The large Gannett chain of newspapers even announced it was dumping wire stories from the Associated Press so it could use the cash savings to fill gaps, which, based on history, could be gaps in Gannett's top executives' pay. The backstory is that 20th century business model for legacy newsrooms, monopoly distribution that was a magnet for advertisers, was obliterated by the World Wide Web. Trial and error, like the mere pennies from digital advertising, convinced leaders of most surviving outlets, including the Inquirer, that the digital subscription paywall model is the only truly viable option. Personally, I agree with the strategy. Investigating corrupt public officials takes money, and it's better than the community support this work. Instead, it's better that the community supports the work instead of the government or some other corporate entity. That's you can finish reading that article. I'll post it in the blog for the show. But here's the deal: because this, like I explained earlier on KPFT, and like I said, I didn't stream it because we made an error. But like I explained earlier on KPFT, that hit home. It hits local. When I gave up my software company, I gave it up because my website, which is a news and opinion website, news and real opinion website, was being financed by ads. So people come to my site. The companies I subscribe to companies who put a widget on my page that allows me to make money from advertising that they show to the people who come to my site. I got a lot of flack sometimes because every now and then some kind of right wing stuff would enter my media, but I didn't have control over that. Now, when I decided to quit my software company and or rather give up my software company, not quit, give up on the software company, wind it down to do full-time media activism, I reduced my expenses to the bare minimum, and the idea was the ads from my website would be just enough to cover my costs to exist, to keep the stuff on the internet, to do all these things that I needed to do. That was the idea. It was the business plan. That was the business plan. And then in one day, this is why you see my disdain for corporate America and talk about the indentured servitude and slavery, antiseptic slavery. In one day, Google and Facebook changed their algorithm. One day. And what that meant is that all the traffic that keywords and all of that that used to bring people to my website for my stories stopped coming in one day. If you take a look at the chart a few years ago, you had my traffic was like this, and then it just disappeared, which left me in a big hole. 10%, I lost 90% of my income. Again, after making all these plans, 90% of my income. What is a newspaper supposed to do? So what happened? You notice that he spoke about whether news should be free, and I think news should be free. I honestly think news should be free. You shouldn't have to be able to pay somebody to be able to be informed, and it needs to be also independent. So what I did all kinds of things before I went and tried Patreon and that these other things. I actually put a paywall on my website, and stories you could read a little piece and then you go through the paywall to see the rest. And I never forgot, this woman called me. She's a longtime listener, user, all that kind of stuff. And she was like, I can't afford to pay for a newspaper. That's why I come to you. That's why I come, And for that one person, I said, all right, you know what? I'm gonna pay her stuff to see the site. But that happened over and over. I had to build income for the website. And so I opened it back up, wide open again. I had to change the model. But I couldn't. News has to be free for everybody. That's the only way we can have a true democracy. So I then established Patreon and the YouTube subscriptions and all of that. That said, for people who can afford to, I ask them to subscribe to our newsletter, subscribe to our Patreon, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Those people who can afford it, let's subsidize all of those who can't, right? And that way we can keep the news free. So if you notice, when I advertise my newsletter as well, I tell folks, hey, the newsletter is free, but for those who can afford to become a subscriber of the newsletter, I ask you to do so to subsidize everybody else so we keep it free, right? If you take a look at the article that I presented today, the only free news according to this article then would be, if we don't follow the model like I am doing and others are trying to do, is the propaganda that's coming from, let's say, that's coming from Netanyahu or Putin or all these guys, right? But here's the kicker. Don't look at it as being something just being put out by the communist Putin. That's not it at all. That's not it at all, because our plutocrats as well, they're the ones buying up the paper. The Sun, the Baltimore Sun, an American billionaire bought the paper and says, I want you guys to start writing stories that get eyeballs. Not necessarily true, not necessarily informative. We just want eyeballs. That's what we want. So the title again of my program, the first part of the title is, or a part of it was, Media Money Problems Hurt Our Democracy. If our information isn't available free to everybody, if the truth is not available for free to everybody, that means only those who can afford to would be informed, and those who simply cannot afford to be a patron. Well, actually, like I said, all my stuff is still free, but I do ask you to support it via Patreon, etc., etc. I'll tell you a joke afterwards. But it would then say that the people susceptible to misinformation would be the poorest people who cannot afford to buy a subscription to the media that's giving them truthful information. And it's the same people who cannot afford to be ill informed, misinformed, disinformed that are hurt, by the current state of our media. So, folks, media has got to remain free. Those of us in the independent media realm, we are actually helping that because while many can't have a paywall to the New York Times, I pay to get data from the New York Times. I pay for the New York Post. I pay for the not New York Post, uh, uh, the the New York Times. I pay for the Washington Post. I pay for the Houston Chronicle, and these different pay. I go behind those paywalls and bring the information that all can see for free. But all we ask is that those who can afford become subscribers of either our Patreon at politicsandright.com/Patreon, our newsletter at politicsandright.com/newsletter, or our YouTube at politicsandright.com/YouTube. And the reason why, again, information has got to be free and subsidized for those who can afford to. Otherwise, we lose our democracy. We lose our democracy because if the free media is bought by if the free media is funded by the billionaires and Putin and Xi and all these other people, those are the people who will control the minds of the low information buyers, the low information of our brothers and sisters. And we need everybody to be in the game. So, folks, I hope you see how I connected this article to our democracy. Bruce Pollard is in the house. Welcome aboard, Bruce. And my brother Norman Reynolds hasn't listened to us live in a long time. How are you doing, my brother? El Señor Norman Reynolds is in the house. Let's see, who else have I missed? I want to call all my people out. Lee Grant is in the house. I don't think I called you out yet, brother Grant. Tom C is in the house. Tom, do you have another limerick for us today? That one was a doozy yesterday. All right, let me start before I go to the first video. Let me start reading from what people have been saying in the chat. Tom C said, "Could problems with USPS be Louis DeJoy? There's absolutely no doubt about it, and we know exactly what he's doing. He's changed around the sorting stations. He's actually reduced the times that it takes for first class letter deterministically. It is just sick what he has done. What he's trying to do is slow USPS down enough to give plausibility to UPS, FedEx, and all these other carriers. But remember, none of these carriers can move mail as efficiently as the United States Post Office. And in fact, the last mile and rural areas around this country are not handled by UPS or FedEx. It is handled by, guess who? The good old United States Postal Service. So when they tell you how efficient private sector is compared to big government, let me tell you, the USPS is much more efficient than UPS. The USPS, the United States Postal Service, is more efficient than every single private carrier, bar none. And anybody wants to have that discussion with me, call me. 281-823-7747. Every zip code, everything that these guys use, they use the public sector information for zip code analysis and all of that. They use the routing information that we, the people, pay for. And then they profit from the most profitable portion of mail delivery, which is packages. And also, if you want to deliver a piece of mail, just a piece of paper, the cheapest rate you can get to send a piece of paper to the closest person in this country is about $5 or so by FedEx or UPS. All right? You know what it costs? 56 cents by the United States Postal Service, the most efficient delivery service in America. We the people, even though it's an agency of the government, but it is government. All right. Anyhow, Carl Cox says another right wing propaganda rag. Yes, 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 yes. Who else have we got here? Thank you for giving us that information that you do constantly. E2247, welcome aboard. Bruce says late but glad to be here, and I'm glad to have you here, my brother. Let's see. I wonder what plans on climate chaos, NATO, national regional security in the Middle East are in HF's Project 2025. I am doing a series on Project 25. Howard brought it up, and I'm trying to figure out how best to do it. Whether I'm going to do a weekly series on it or a daily series on it. I need to do some more reading of the document itself, but we're going to do something about Project 2025. Bridge MCP says Chevron owns the city's new site. Many stories aren't told, like climate. Richmond, California, open flame shot upward for four smokestacks at the Chevron refinery on the western edge of Richmond, California. Soon black smoke blanketing the sky. News spread quickly that day last November, but by word of mouth, says Danny Kappencock, a 29-year-old Richmond resident. We don't know the full story, but we know that you shouldn't breathe the air outside of that matter. Kaffentong says now it would be nice to have an actual news outlet that would actually go out there and figure it out themselves. The city's primary local news source, the Richmond Standard, didn't cover the flare, nor had it reported on a 2021 Chevron refinery pipeline rupture that dumped nearly 800 gallons of diesel into the San Francisco Bay. Chevron is the city's largest employer, largest taxpayer, and largest polluter. Huh. Yet, when it comes to writing about Chevron, the Richmond Standard consistently toes the company line, and there's a reason for that. Chevron owns the Richmond Standard. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about it. Egberto, please post a link of the article you read from the FB as well. I will post from the FB. Is that which article was it from the FB again? Anyway, I'll go ahead and post this one here from Common Dreams and take it from there. And I've just posted the one from Common Dreams. It's going to be in the link to our article today, however. All right, let's continue. Bruce says, only look at the sun during eclipse totally, otherwise use certified glasses. You test by putting on and looking down first. Only look at the sun. Only look at the sun during eclipse totality, otherwise use certified glasses. Okay, when is the eclipse? I think it's what day is the eclipse? All right. Tom C says Good Friday, celebrating 2,000 years of a radical progressive who preached a gospel of love, mercy, and forgiveness, spoke truth to power, and was crucified for his beliefs and activism. That would be Jesus Christ. Absolutely so. Norman Reynolds says, listening live today. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here, Brother Reynolds. Bree says, my point was an oil company owning a newspaper and not reporting what they're doing is exactly the problem. You're exactly right, Bree MCP. Eric says, climate is left pushed via PDR. VS, that was, well, I mean, again, I can't, what is it? We can't speak to the dead in this regards, guy. Climate change is real. That there's a publication that produces sketch information has been true since the National Enquirer, and open dialogue has to tolerate this. Again, look, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people having to pay for real news and not pay for being lied to. That's what we're talking about, Brother Grant. Bruce says, so we all need to help pay for the gas for the ride. Yes, we do. And don't forget, in paying for that gas, that means supporting all the rags like Politics Done Right, TYT, the Norman Show, and all these other shows that you have out there that are trying to put the truth out there. Bridge MCP says, Lee, true, but given false or no info because you own the company isn't right, and it should actually be a what is it? It should actually be illegal. It should actually be illegal. It should actually be a crime. Bruce says we need an internet equivalent of Hyde Park in London. Yes. Let's see what else we got from E2247. PDR mission statement inspires and brims with goodwill. Worth reading. It is the first thing you see. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate that. Politics Done Right displays the best features of a free press done right. PDR inspires us all, and I love you for your commentary. I really love you for your commentary, my brother E2247. Norman Reynolds says, info should be free to educate everyone, but not if it stays within a free market environment. We need something similar to BBC to manage political education. Our BBC was supposed to be NPR, but NPR pretty much got bought out by corporations in the way that they're underwritten. All right. Let's see. Para ver. NBC's listen to too many journalists, not two. I got you. I got you. Michael Ronan says, Eric, Ronna McDaniel was already fired. You understand why? She was part of the fake elector scheme that aimed to overturn our democracy. This is as close to a treasonous person as you can find. They have no business being part of the media. I swear some people have their moral compass backward. Ronna McDaniel is a terrorist. She didn't shoot the bullet, but she's a terrorist. All right. Paul Fleming says, Good Friday from the Atlanta. I hear you, Paul Fleming. I hear you. I hear you. Tom C says, Murder of the New York police officer was criminal with 21 prior arrests. How did he get a gun? More effectively, gun control needed? Of course. He got a gun because the gun folks don't care about us. They just they sell the gun to whoever would buy it. Paul Fleming says President Donald Trump and several of the co-defendants in I had a little drip here from not being out here. Okay, here we go. Victims. I missed my point. That something happened to the headset. Former President Donald Trump and several of his co-defendants in Georgia election subversion case are appealing a judge's ruling that let the Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis remain on the job. It will fail. I know. The eclipse is on the 8th. Thank you, Bridge. I need to see the eclipse. I hope we have good weather. All right, Paul Fleming says the Trump tax cuts slashed the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21, but the new loopholes and special breaks, it's even worse. Massive corporations like Netflix, Bank of America, Citigroup, and other have paid an effective rate of less than 5%. The system is rigged. And you're going to see the story that I have from Chris Hayes in a little bit. Norman Reynolds says the current free market media environment depends on billionaires and advertising. Without that, no news, but an attraction that without the not news, but an attraction sandwich to sell advertising. Yeah. All right. Continuing. Paul Fleming says Joyanne Reed warns us. The men over the Heritage Foundation, a wealthy right-wing think tank, have published a detailed plan for the next Republican president. In the section on abortion, you get a good sense of what's coming for us. More on the dangers of Project 2025. I am going to cover it. I'm going to see if I can go ahead and timestamp it into several pieces and have something like it every day. Anyway, I want you guys to listen to this Chris Hayes piece in detail, folks. I see Bridge wants me to put something on the screen. Let's see if I should get that beforehand. Let's see what she wants. Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and put that up real quick. Now my screen is blinking again, I believe, or I don't know if it cleaned itself up or not yet. But there you go, Bridge MCP. It says, in a like we had a crash, but we are back up now. Okay, I think we're back. I think we are back. The crash is back. We are no longer crashed. Okay, I don't know what happened. Maybe the FBI is trying to get to me or something like that. So I lost everything, including all the things that I brought in. So let's go ahead and get that up and running right now. Let's go ahead and play that Chris Hayes piece because I think it is very, very important. So it's about Trump and his tariffs. So let's go ahead and do that right now before it crashes again. So here we go. As we sit back and talk about MAGA and we sit back and talk about all the shenanigans that Donald Trump is doing, we fail to look at the things that really matter, the things that he said he's going to do, and how it's going to affect us in the aggregate. And funny, what he did with China by imposing those tariffs close to when he left the left the presidency, we have to realize that what that had to do with inflation. Putting tariffs on China isn't hurting China per se. It is hurting the American people because tariffs on any product is passed on as a tax directly to a person. If you buy a refrigerator and from China, then guess what? Tariffs is placed on it. That refrigerator increases in price by that tariff because you know who never takes a loss. And that is, of course, the plutocracy. Our executives never take a loss. They raise prices whenever prices are raised on them, plus more. So let's be clear here. Whenever Trump talks about tariff, that's what he's talking about. Now, again, he's talking about imposing a 10% tariff coming from China because he's going to stick it to China. What he doesn't really tell you is that it's a tariff that, well, I tell you what, let's listen to this and then we'll take it on the other side.
There's one thing that truly unites all Americans, it's that everyone hates paying more for stuff. That is why, when inflation sent the price of everyday goods soaring in the wake of the pandemic, you saw it reflected in poll after poll after poll. People's view of the economy plummeted. So did their approval of the president. In fact, this happened basically across the Western world. It was everyone's first taste of real sharp inflation in a generation. And guess what? People really hated it, which is, of course, completely understandable because, well, it really, really sucked. In 2020, your average family of four paid about $927 a month for groceries. At the height of inflation in 2022, the average was $1,307 a month. That's $400 more a month. Now, that has started to come down, actually, in real terms. The average at the end of last year was around $1,261, but again, still up from 2020. And the experience of paying more and more and feeling like prices are out of control and feeling squeezed translates to disaffection. And that disaffection is probably the single biggest advantage you can have as, say, the challenger to an incumbent president operating in a world in which prices have gone up. And yet, the Republican challenger, President Biden, isn't running on lowering prices. He's actually running on jacking up prices on a huge amount of the goods we use every day. And I know it sounds like I'm making this up, but genuinely, and I want to be clear here, his core economic policy proposal right now is an across-the-board consumer sales tax for every single good imported into the United States. Now, he may call it a tariff, but it will just be passed along to consumers in a sales tax on every single good that is imported. And again, you do not need to take my word for it. Just listen to Donald Trump himself.
Number one, I think we should have a ring around the collar, as they say. I think when companies come in and they dump their products in the United States, they should pay automatically, let's say, a 10% tax.
I'm a big believer in tariffs for two reasons. Number one, I fully believe in them economically when you're being taken advantage of by other countries. I would say to China, if you're building a plant on our border to build cars in Mexico and to sell them into the United States, I'm putting a 50% tariff on all those cars.
You used tariffs and sanctions against China.
I did, and I did very well with it. As you know, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes through the taxes and tariffs.
Is that what you want to do again?
Well, you have to do it.
Okay, if you are a single issue inflation voter, there is only one candidate who wants to put a 10% tax that will be passed along to consumers as a sales tax on every single good that's imported. And here's the thing, this is not a hypothetical. Trump did a miniature version of this the last time he was president when he put tariffs on different Chinese goods. Here's how that worked out. According to analysis by the New York Fed, the average import tariff rate more than doubled in 2018 alone. It tangibly led to higher domestic consumer prices. Take the first two tariffs on washing machines and steel. Economists found that consumer prices for washing machines, which have been going down steadily since 2012, almost immediately jumped back up after Trump's tariffs. In fact, the New York Times found that the washer-specific tariffs raised costs for importers like LG and Samsung. The steel import tariffs raised costs for some domestic manufacturers like Whirlpool, pushing prices up for consumers. Now Trump wants to do it again, but bigger, okay? Now, you can argue this is going to, in the long run, help American manufacturing. There's some argument on the other side of it. But in the short term, like what's going to happen is the prices are going to go up. The Democratic Alliance Center for American Progress found that Trump's proposed new tariffs would cost typical households an extra $1,500 per year. Here's what that might look like. Trump is proposing a 10% tariff. If that 10% gets passed on to consumers, which is generally how it works, things will cost more. Now, we don't know exactly how much everything would cost, but you just add 10% on the back of the napkin. Here's the cost of living under the Trump tax. Start with groceries, which has been the site of a lot of angst, right? A dozen eggs costs about $3. Once you apply the Trump tax, that goes up to $3.30. And with the U.S. importing more than 4 million eggs a year, that could cost American consumers over $1.2 million. If you like oranges, those currently go for about $1.53 per pound. With the 10% Trump tax, it would be $1.68 per pound, which would cost American consumers almost $71 million for the nearly 500 million pounds that we import. Or how about bananas? We don't really grow them in the U.S., do we? They average about 63 cents per pound, going up to 69 cents per pound with the Trump tax. And thanks to the U.S. importing more than 10 billion with a B pounds per year, that could cost Americans $609 million. That's a $609 million tax on American consumers. Then there's tomatoes. They go for about $2.13 per pound. Apply a 10% Trump tax, they would be $2.34 per pound, potentially costing Americans $3.5 million, thanks to the 16.5 million pounds we import per year. The point is, if you were spending $1,200 a month on groceries, add another $120 to the bill. That's more than even the peak of inflation in 2022, which topped off at 9%. This is 10%, okay? And it's not just groceries. How about the refrigerator? You need to keep those groceries fresh. Right now, the average cost of a new fridge is about $1,300. With the Trump tax, that could go up to $1,430, costing Americans $1.95 billion for the 15 million refrigerators that we import. Again, that's a $1.95 billion in new taxes. What about the car you need to drive to the grocery store? On average, a new car costs about $48,808 today. With a Trump tax, it could cost $53,684, with Americans potentially taking a $66.3 billion hit across the more than 13 million cars we import. And that's not even with the 50% tariff that he says he wants to slap on imported cars, which would make it another $25,000. Even the smartphone in your pocket costs on average about $940 right now. With the Trump tax, that could go up to $1,034, with Americans potentially paying an extra $13.2 billion for the nearly 141 million smartphones we import per year. Everyone hates when you have to pay more for things. Inflation is one of the biggest vulnerabilities for a sitting president. And yet, here's Donald Trump in the year of our Lord, 2024, running against President Biden, promising to make things more expensive for every American.
What Trump doesn't tell you, in addition to that 10% tariff that he is intending on impose on China, so that you will eventually have your taxes raised by 10% based on what you purchase. What he doesn't tell you is, again, who is that tax going to? They impose a tax on China. You, the American people, actually pay the tax on the product, because it's not China paying the tax. It's the person who buys the product from China who pays the tax. And who gets that money? The federal government. And what does Trump want to do when he comes into office? Give a big tax cut to corporations and the wealthy again. So in effect, this tariff is going to be used to take your money and put it into the pockets of rich people yet again, above and beyond the $1.something trillion he gave them. People, understand the dynamics. Understand it. He's going to be taking taxes in the form of tariffs from you. China doesn't pay the tariffs. You pay the tariff, because when the corporations import from China, a tariffs have applied to them. They pay that tariff not to China, but as a tax to the United States government. And when the United States government get that tax, who do you think is paying the corporations to pay that tax? You are with the inflated prices that's going to be going on refrigerators, etc. And then they can give that tax cut to the wealthy people, because guess who's not going to get it? You're not. Remember, we have experience with that. It's not like this guy wasn't president before. He was the president before, and most of his tax cut went exactly where we said it would go. That is to a whole bunch of rich people. Again, do you want to continue being a sucker of somebody who doesn't have much upstairs, other than some form to take your money, to take you to the cleaners, to lie to you, to do the things to you that no one else you would allow them to do to you? Folks, wake up and vote accordingly.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please. join.
Hey guys, I want to make a proposal to conservatives. I want to make the tax rate for corporations zero. All right? I want to make the tax rates for corporations zero as long as they disperse 100% of their income after expenses and taxes and depreciation, etc. They must get rid of 100% of their income in the form of dividends to their shareholders. And number two, all dividends must be taxed. Under no other circumstances, dividends and capital gains should all be taxed at the rate that the average working American pays taxes, and Social Security should have no limit as far as how much is paid. In other words, the Social Security is 14% or so. Social Security plus Medicare, 14%. All all income should be subject to Social Security, just like Medicare is subject to all income is subject to Medicare. And capital gains get no preferential treatment. And then under that scenario, I'm for zero capital gains for taxes, or rather, zero taxes for corporations. I think that's a good trade off. Folks, if we did that, guess what? We would have all the programs that we need. And for people who said that'll slow down the economy, they're lying to you. That would throw a whole lot of money right back into the economy because people would be able to do more things. They will have more things that they can do as opposed to having the money stuck in a bank by some rich person who didn't earn it. So don't let them fool you. It'll work. It'll work. All right, let's see what else we got here from more peeps. Let's see. Anytime I hear Eric say bad inflation, I really worry about his intellect. I really do, because I really worry about it. Honestly, I am 100% honest that if you say bad inflation, it actually says something about your mental capacity. If you don't connect the dots, including after I have explained these things a million times, right? It does say something about intellect. All right, let's continue here. Bridge MCP says sometimes, oh, Ray, I always love hearing from Ray. Brother Ray, talk to me, my brother.
Yeah, I wanted to close us out on the subject that you were speaking of. I was actually having a conversation with my cousin last night about taxes because he wanted to know if he was to buy a Tesla, or something like that. If he made so much money, how much would he be able to make and such and so on. But basically what I did, I went through the tax brackets and I went to the tax bracket. So I went to the tax bracket from 22 and I went all the way to 24. Now, from 22 to 24, there will be a progressive change. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can look it up. When you made I think 10,285 in 22, then you would jump to the next tax bracket from 10% to 12%. But in the 24 tax bracket, you could make up to 11.5 before you jump to the next tax bracket, and so on and so forth. So, for all my right-wing, buddies who say that, taxes always go up when Democrats are in office, that's a lie. As a matter of fact, I could say two things, and a lot of progressives won't admit this, but I hate paying taxes. I do, because a lot of times the taxes that we're paying, Egberto, are not going to the benefits that benefit us as a society. It goes to wars. It goes to subsidies for those rich fat cats that's already getting money, and I don't benefit from it. The tax code, it screws the working class. It is not friendly to the working class. And I was even telling my cousin one last thing. If you look at rich people in different classes, let's say the NFL, for instance. Now, the player is going to get his income taxed at 37% because he is the worker. But the owner, who has all the stocks and bonds, he's going to get the lower tax rate. So even in the working class, the rich still get screwed.
You know something?
Your thoughts?
You notice. Let me first say that I could not have said that any better. I could not have said that any better. The working rich also gets hit by the progressive tax. There. I think it was. I don't remember if it was Hughley or one of these comedians went out there and say you have to learn the difference between having a high income and being wealthy. There is a very distinct difference between that, and you just pointed it out with your narrative right there. You can make, if you notice, a lot of these guys make millions of dollars, and because they didn't turn their high income into wealth management, they went broke after a few years. You nailed it pretty much. The idea is wealth in this country is what's worshipped. Wealth in this country is what the tax code is made for. And you are absolutely right that we in the lower classes are paying a whole lot of taxes, right? And in paying a whole lot of taxes, we are mostly subsidizing the wealthy because, again, their wealth is built on our work. It would be nice if we were getting paid the excess labor that they are taking away from us. So I couldn't have said it any better, Ray. You nailed it, and you said it perfectly, sir. And for Eric, who continues to use the phrase Bidenflation is Bidenomics, sir, I talk to you. I enjoy your friendship, but it shows you that you are, and I know that you're not a dumb person, but you are in fact making yourself look dumb by putting that analogy together, because I've gone through the mathematics, the arithmetic to show that. The only reason I'm expressing this and giving you any play here for that silly statement is I want the audience out there to understand this. Anybody who associates inflation with Biden and then is given how the numbers work, and if they keep that stance, then they're mentally incapacitated. Because again, Biden has no power to correct for the mistakes or the greed that is provable on our corporate side. That's not a question, that's a statement of fact. Look at Wall Street, look at where the profits came from. It came out of your pocket. And what they've taught you to be is stupid into believing that somehow the federal government is the one responsible for your inflation rate when it's really a greed rate. But again, you can choose to be, there are people that are naturally ignorant, and then there are people that are willfully ignorant. And unfortunately, a lot of our smart listeners on this show choose to be willfully ignorant. But anyway, Ray, I appreciate your call. Anything else you want to say before we close this baby down?
Oh, quick announcement. I got your book in the mail today.
All right. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so I'm going to send you a picture with the book. And to the point that we make, I'm going to say what George Carlin said, and he said it best. Well, before I say that, I'll say, also think about whenever we need our money back, like, FEMA, stimulus payments and stuff like that. It's a problem to give that back to us. But that's the taxes that we paid into the government. Thank you. Now, for my closer, George Carlin said it best. We have 3 classes in this country for the tax code. The wealthy class pays no taxes, gets all the benefits. The working class pays all the taxes, maybe gets some of the benefits. And the poor class, which basically doesn't really pay a lot of taxes and they sometimes get benefits. But the point that he made is the poor class is there to scare the crap out of the working class so that they'll keep coming to work and hope that they'll be part of the wealthy class one day.
Brother,
that's the American dream.
Brother, and that is what he actually called that segment. I have a book called As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. And I actually print out that 3-minute speech from George Carlin in my book. I write it out in my book. You should check that one out. It's called As I See It, Class
I got
Warfare,
it.
the Only Resort. Oh, you got the book. If you look at the back of the book, you'll see that I print out the entire George Carlin speech. It's amazing. I love that. Was one of the better speeches from any comedian. Thank you, J. Ray.
He was a philosopher. All right.
Yes, he
You have a
was.
good weekend, good Friday, and happy Easter to everybody.
Thank you, brother. Peace. Anyway, folks, it is important. It is important. It is important for us to. I tell you what, folks, use this Good Friday and this Easter to say we are going to support Politics Done Right and the work that we do here. It is so important to do so. And how can you support us? I'm going to go about a minute over. Please support us by going to politics. First of all, the all-encompassing way to support us is found at politicsdoneright.com/support. politicsdoneright.com/support. All the different ways in which you can support our program is in that one link. But to specify links now, we need patrons. Patreon is one of our support methodologies. Please consider going to politicsdoneright.com/patron to support us, become a patron of the program, or you can become a YouTube subscriber of the program by going to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. I'd like to ask you to take a look at our store. Our store has a lot of T-shirts, etc., hats. So I make a few pennies on those. politicsdoneright.com/store. You can also get the book that Ray just got, Tribulations of an Afro-Latino Caribbean Man, and all my other books. You can get the hard copies of those books at the voiceover as well as the paperback and the e-copy at politicsdoneright.com/books. If you subscribe, if you become a paid subscriber of our newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, you have the ability to read all our books online. Currently, I think I've already moved 2 over. So please consider supporting what we do. We cannot do this without you. We simply cannot do this without you. So again, become a paid subscriber of our newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Notice, it is free. But those who become paid subscribers, we try to give you a little something for being that paid subscriber. Anyway, I got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. How do I end this baby? You guys know how I end this baby? I am what? Out. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.